So just to start, I've been speaking so far. So to introduce myself, I'm Mantis. I head up the content marketing team at Socialbakers, and we do rely on listening insights to create our content. And next, I'm going to pass the microphone to Monica.
Hey everyone, I'm Monica. I'm so glad to be here today with Mantis and Robert. Hey guys, I head up the product marketing team. So I'm really glad to be with Mantis and Robert today because I work so closely with them every day. So it's cool to just sit down and chat with them. And of course, to chat with you guys too about this super important topic.
And we got Robert joining us from the product team.
Hello guys, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Robert Braniszewski, and my role in Socialbakers is product manager. Product manager in a nutshell is here to identify and deliver solutions, new tools, features for clients just to help them with their business objectives. And it's really easy to use the tool.
Okay, thanks for the intro. A little bit of housekeeping again, just a reminder. Please, when you're responding, change that in the chat. Change it that you're responding to all panelists and attendees so that we all can participate in this conversation in the chat together. And before we take the next step, I'm just going to apologize for the noise in the background. There's a bit of construction happening right outside my home, but I hope you can hear me well. All right, so let's dive into the topic. Monica, do you want to walk us through what we'll cover today?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we are here, of course, to talk about social media listening. I think this is a huge topic for everyone right now. So really glad that you're on the call with us to work through it. We want to, of course, start with how to face 2021 by really tapping into some of the biggest trends in the data that we're seeing, both Socialbakers data and some global data as well. Because if you are really understanding what's happening, then you can make some better decisions to your personal brand strategy. Then we want to dive into listening from two different perspectives. First is, of course, the brand experience, because a lot of us here are knee-deep in planning right now, I can imagine, for next year. So how does continuous listening insights really help you add real value to consumer touchpoints so that you're delivering an awesome experience no matter where your consumers or audiences are finding you? And then finally, we want to tap into that customer care, social marketing kind of complement now. Things are getting blurred, things are getting confusing, but I think ultimately things are getting really cool and interesting. So how can we understand social listening from a customer care perspective now that everybody is really online all the time and expects your brand to be there too? So let's dive in. Of course, if you have any questions or comments, drop them in the chat too. We're not the only experts on the call today. It's really a group share brainstorm, I think, for all of us to get the most value.
Yeah, so maybe just to get people talking in the chat, we'd like to ask you a question. So why do you specifically need social media listening insights? And the options to choose from is that one is, you have a fear of missing out and you don't want to miss any conversations. That could be me. B, you want to know what the haters are complaining about. And C, you want to get the insights to build your best marketing campaign. So which one is it for you guys? Let us know in the chat. And I'm curious to ask Robert, so you speak to many of our clients. What are usually the needs for them when it comes to social media listening?
That's something interesting because it's A, B, C, but also D, E, F, G. There are many, many needs, It's a multi-purpose tool. But in a nutshell, the most use cases for social listening are about brand awareness, about your brand and your products. Then secondary, competitive analysis and benchmarking. And then third, like some particular market research.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people in the chat as well. Claire is saying, is there a D for all of the above? So I think we're all really in the same boat about all the different objectives that we can really get from social listening. We have some A's, many C's, wittiest campaign ever. I think that's important to be standing out for sure in 2021. What about you, Mantis? You said you have a fear of missing out. What is that?
Yeah, that is just a personal thing that I have to work through. But I think if we look at our content team, it would really be a lot as well on the C, and it's just like finding those little nuggets of information that tell you what the audience is thinking about in that precise moment, that week, maybe that kind of month. What's the topic that everyone's onto, so that you can be a part of that conversation.
Daria makes a great point. She says emerging trends and opportunities. And I think we're going to be talking a lot about opportunities today. So totally agree there for sure.
Yeah. So speaking about opportunities, so there's still plenty of opportunity for people to start using listening. So we're thinking about this in the context of current year and the coronavirus pandemic. So the research shows that about 51% of marketers were using social media listening to understand their changing audiences during this time. And I don't know what to make of number. Is this a large number? Is this a small number? Monica, what do you think?
I mean, since it's smack dab in the middle, I would say that it's people are starting to catch on, because generally with these research trends, we see much smaller slices. I think a half of surveyed marketers is huge, and that's something that's going to be, I think, growing over the next year. I'd like to know if these 51% were using social listening before 2020, or how many people really got with the program just this year to really make sure that they could catch what was happening. It would be interesting for me to see.
Yeah, and I don't know, Robert, anything to add here? Are clients adopting listening to understand changing behaviors right now?
Yes, and it's less and less an option nowadays. Yeah, because what we could see even this year, even in the past, there was this slow actually quick trend in accelerating the digitalization or being more present in the digital space. But this year, it got even steeper. Yeah. So we leave more and more so-called digital footprint in the space out there. So for marketeers, it's more available and more accessible to learn about the customer behavior, because there's just basically more chatter in the digital space. So definitely last year, it was less than 51%. And talking with our customers, we see a really increasing trend and demand for the social listening tools. And so we see a major shift in this area to get them more insights from the digital true listening solutions.
Yeah. And so I think you kind of already hinted. So what is the obvious reason why this data set is increasing? Well, it's because all our time right now is spent online, literally from the moment you wake up to even your commute, is kind of, with your phone in your hand from your bed to your work desk. And right after you finish work, you're again on a device. So the amount of data that marketers can use to understand the consumer has grown during this year immensely. Monica, what's your kind of feeling? What's most important to recognize here?
Yeah, I would say there's no turning back, right? So as we see in the trends, consumer behaviors are just different now, as we can say. As Robert mentioned, that steep path towards digitalization has affected us all. So as we can see, the consumers are adopting new shopping behaviors. I know that's very true for me. And of course, when you're adopting new shopping behaviors on digital, you're going to have way higher expectations of your experience in that shopping sort of realm. You're not going to have that experience with the shop assistant or, the store layout. You're going to have a different sort of digital experience that's going to affect how you see a brand, I think, a lot faster than maybe, a bad experience in a store. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Robert, do you want to add something here?
No, we see that behavior changed, and with behavior also habits are changing. Habits is a deeper tissue. So now it's not so uncommon to work online. Even before you had to be in the office. Now it's not so uncommon to have a birthday party with your remote family through Zoom. Yeah, it was very strange years ago, like so impersonal, but now it's almost the best thing you can do and still stay in touch. Yeah, so we are getting more digital. And that leaves a trace, and that leaves all the information out there, which we can use to make the products more useful for our clients at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot more Zoom calls and even webinars like this. when looking at our own data as well, we see these behaviors shift. So this is a curious point that maybe I'd like the audience to ask what you all think about this. But looking at our data, we see that the time online, time on social media channels has shifted by an hour earlier. Is that your experience? Are you waking up an hour earlier? What about you, Monica?
We'll see. I think for me, we talked a little bit about this. Like some people, if we're spending so much time online, maybe time is meaningless, but I can understand some people, maybe their mornings start a little bit earlier because they don't have that commute, or they're feeling peppy because they haven't been out all night and they're ready to start their day fresh and clean and ready to see what content's out there. I don't know, Robert, are you a little bit different than me?
I like a good sleep. I take advantage of not commuting to work. So if I can make a morning a bit longer, I don't hesitate to take the chance. Yeah. So I'm a bit an extreme in this graph. I'm on the different side.
Yeah. So the big question is, so what is 2021 going to look like? And I think we already hinted in the previous slides a little bit that these behaviors that have emerged, they're going to continue. And we see that very clearly in some of the data that we see.
Yeah, exactly. 2021 is uncharted, but we can still sort of look to the trends that are growing rapidly to make some semblance of plans early on before we have to adjust them again.
So just a couple of points that we want to surface here. Again, we mentioned it. Pretty much your entire day is right now spent on a device. From working hours to after work. There are very few gaps in between, and it's not surprising that we're spending more time on mobile devices. And what does that mean for businesses? So, Monica, maybe you want to walk us through this slide.
Yeah, I think this makes total sense if we are spending our time online, if we're celebrating these big, shopping milestones online. I know last week was just Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and then we have also Giving Tuesday. We can see that the product research done on mobile will then, if the experience from the research perspective is smooth and we've gotten that sorted out and you're able to, catch any negative reviews or respond to them, then the shopping experience will be much more in your favor as a brand. And all of this being done on mobile means you have to optimize that experience as much as possible. So it's not just about the great content you're putting out, it's the entire experience that you're really building for your consumers online. Exactly.
Yeah, and it covers the entire sort of customer journey. That maybe there were more parts of the customer journey that were outside the digital realm. Like right now, it's all digital. Which takes us to this slide, actually, which maybe illustrates the point of the complexity of those customer experiences right now. I think, Monica, you were kind of put it quite beautifully when we were discussing this earlier, is that each point represents an opportunity, and it represents kind of a customer experience, but also the data point for the marketer. Can you expand on that just a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really this give and take, as it says here, at every touch point. So when a consumer meets you, whether it's in marketing or the purchase or post-purchase phase, they're experiencing you, but at the same time, you should be gathering the insights about them at that very same touch point so that you can optimize it in the future for other users, for other audiences. And I think that's why it's so important we have Robert on the call today, because he's building solutions that really helps this understanding of data extraction and analysis that you can actually take action on to make this experience super smooth every time you run a new campaign or every time you have a new consumer going through your customer experience that you've built for them.
Yeah, because having, so the first struggle nowadays, the situation is, let me start from the beginning, situation more and more digital footprint, there's more and more information of users and their behavior in the space. So the first struggle is to have access to that information. Yeah, in social listening, it's typically access to public APIs from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So you are able to download all relevant information. But then you have another problem, how to analyze it. Yeah, having information is good, but if you cannot really get an answer from this information, there's a big struggle. That's where social listening analytical tools comes in place. You can really filter it by age or country. You can search through keywords on hashtags or emojis. We will see that later. And that will only after then you can really answer the question, like, who are the most happy clients I have, or talking about me? What is their age profile, from which country they're coming, what is their favorite topic? And then really opens all, like book, magic book of all the answers you always wanted to know. Only if you're really able to slice and dice that a huge pool of information in an efficient and effective way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This kind of leads us to the next slide. And Monica, I know you've shared this a number of times, but I think it really gets to the crux of it. Do you want to explain this to us?
Yeah, I think it's important that everybody in the industry is really talking about this. So we have a great quote from Senior Manager of Industry Strategy at Adobe, and they really talk about these interactions as hints, or this digital fingerprints. Robert calls them, again, digital footprint, but it's really just having these, catching all these faint messages or loud messages, but you need to catch them all that are important to you and your objectives. So what are you trying to find out? You need to find those, and people aren't always going to be on your own profiles telling you exactly how they feel. That's not how it works in real life either. I'm not going to, tell Mantis how I feel, or Robert all the time. I might be talking to somebody else. This is the whole telephone kind of problem you have to deal with. You have to get that final message, but it might be going through some weird channels before you can actually get it. So it's important to have solutions in place to organize your analysis, because these expectations and these conversations are constantly changing.
And just to set the stage for the rest of the webinar, so there's two parts that we want to cover, and they actually really ought to be thought as the one holistic thing. But we want to speak about using social media listening for the start of the customer journey in terms of the marketing and the campaigns you're running, and then later move to looking at the customer care part of the journey and looking at the social media listening use cases in that area. So just to set the stage here. But let's dive in. So the first part, the brand experiences. In order to do this, we want to give you a couple of questions that you should be thinking about when using social media listening in the stage. And we want to pair it with a use case that Monica prepared. So I think it will be easier for you to orient yourself with how you can use it here. So Monica, I'm giving it to you then.
Awesome. Thank you. So we are all here to understand what brands can really learn from social media listening. What are these fingerprints? What are these hints? A lot of them are super important, of course. So how aware people and influencers are about your brand, what trends do audiences want to see more of, who these audiences even are, how successful product launches are. And I think a big one, and we'll touch on this later as well, is what competitors are doing well and perhaps not so well. So as in a world where there are still so many emerging best practices for 2020 and 2021, it's important to learn from the best and maybe learn from other people's errors before you make them. And the example I want to talk about today is from a cosmetics brand, Colourpop. And it's, I think, a really interesting, heartwarming story because it turns influencer marketing a little bit on its head, in that there's a huge influencer out there, Raw Beauty Christie, and she's actually an advocate of the brand Colourpop, but they've never had a product collaboration before. And so imagine you have a person with a huge amount of following who loves your brand. What is the sort of natural pairing here? And if we move to the next slide.
And those people, of course, exist for your brand too. Those people exist for Socialbakers as well.
Exactly. I think the beauty space, of course, is always interesting to talk about because there's a wealth of use cases, but this really applies to so many brands, B2B, B2C. But what ends up happening is every time she's reviewing Colourpop makeup on her channels, her fans are asking for a product collaboration. You can see in this clip from her video of the launch, she put in all the quotes, every comment that basically came in. She was stacking up all the comments, like do a collaboration with Colourpop, Colourpop, don't sleep on this, stuff like that. And if Colourpop didn't have access to understanding their community outside of their brand bubble, they would have missed all of this action happening on Raw Beauty Christie's page. And thankfully, they really listened into what their audience and adjacent audiences really wanted and actually launched a product collaboration with Raw Beauty Christie that sold out the majority of items in 24 hours. So work with somebody who loves you, find those people, those opportunities, as Daria was talking about, and jump on them. And the results really speak for themselves here if we head to the next slide. So we see two posts here from Colourpop Cosmetics on the left. They posted about the product launch and they had amazing engagement. This was an A-graded post from our Socialbakers algorithm. And then Raw Beauty Christie, when she announced it on her own channels on Instagram, this was her best performing post of 2020. So great engagement for the influencer. She'll continue working. She'll continue getting brand endorsements, but awesome brand awareness for Colourpop at the same time.
Yeah, and it's this use case for me just shows that you gotta expand a little bit where you're listening. Like you want to not only listen to your competitors and maybe publishers in your kind of industry space, but also the advocates and not advocates, sorry, like influencers in that space and people who have big audiences too, or small audiences actually. But again, I just want to stress that this is relevant to every business out there. Like this is relevant for Socialbakers as well. And I think no matter what kind of sector you're working in now, this is going to be the case. And I just want to quickly share how we're using it at Socialbakers, if you guys don't mind. And Robert, we'll really need your help here because we're going to be diving into the product. So I think it'd be really curious to hear your take here with how it was built. So when I dive into the product, I kind of go to the analytics tab and I go into the listening section. So this is what you've built. So maybe you can start us here.
Okay, so we are already deep in the tool. There was one step which happened before, and that's when we want to really understand what's happening in the world, we have to define so-called listening query. It's like a little formula which consists all the keywords, direct mentions or hashtags, and your definition of the social platform from which you want to get this information, and your filters about the countries from which you want to get this information. So you define this formula, you hit the button run, and it started collecting all information in the world as they're happening. And then once you have that information, the next best step is to analyze it. So here in this button, we just pick that pool of mentions we have, and we are going to analyze. We are going to understand what's behind. And to help you out, we created a couple of views which answer a little bit of different questions. So you can look at the pool of mentions you have and understand what's the volume over the time. Or you can understand in which social channel there is more, there is less attraction, or sentiment. Maybe you're familiar with positive, negative sentiment social media. Here you can do a good analysis on top of that.
Yeah, just Robert, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give the audience a bit of context of what we'll be looking at here. So for instance, in this specific use case, we've recently run a pretty big, kind of our biggest flagship event of the year, which is the Socialbakers Engage, which happened over the course of 3 years. And so, of course, we wanted to understand everything, all the conversations that were happening around that event. And so this is what we'll be looking at in a second. But sorry, Robert, just to let you finish.
Yeah, a course of 3 days, Mantis. I mean, we've been running the event for many, many years, but it was a 3-day jam-packed event with talks and different tracks. And I think what was interesting about this event compared to other events that we run is there were different tracks that users could go to. So it's so important to gather that insight for next year's event so that we can understand which talk tracks were the most interesting, which talk tracks maybe didn't get them as much traction as we wanted. So I think it's especially important to answer these types of questions. And Robert will walk us through how we can do that.
Yeah. So for instance, in this views that Robert, you're explaining, essentially like the aggregate views would give us like the overall scope, then the volume would give us the total volume kind of queries around the Socialbakers Engage, which channels those conversations were happening around the event, and actually the sentiment behind the event, which is so important for the team who was organizing the event. But Robert, back to you.
Right. But you inspire me, guys, that we make the social listening tool not just for our clients, we use it also for ourselves as Socialbakers. And that's right, we had that big event, Engage. I really recommend you to check some of the speakers. It was good. And we really want to understand how much echo we created in the beyond owned content in the world. So one of the view is aggregated overview, where you have the cream of the cream, the best of the best metrics, most essential ones across all these other views you see. Sometimes our clients just stick to this view because it answers most of the questions. And here you can see the basic metrics, essential metrics for the listening. It's always about the number of people, number of mentions, interactions behind, potential impressions as well. Then you can see trends, ups and downs in number of people commenting or number of people mentioning you. And then if you want to go further, you can understand where you did the biggest explosion, which channel, so we see in Twitter. So maybe that's where our target group actually is. Maybe we can invest next time more in Twitter advertising. And here you see how the sentiment was evolving over the time. And if you want to learn even more, we can understand what were the keywords behind the positive mentions, what were the keywords behind the negative mentions, what were, yes, we can analyze whenever we can click on any of these keywords and see the mentions which caused that keyword. And then we have emojis. Monica, I think that's your favorite part.
I mean, who doesn't love a good emoji? Yeah. And I think with events, it's very interesting to see what types are coming in. Are you running a formal event, or are you running something that's a little bit more, fun and loose? What is your brand tone, and are the emojis matching your brand tone too, or are there any coming in that are a little unexpected? Emojis become sort of this universal language, but there are still cultural undertones to consider, age, who's attending your event. So I think it tells a lot. I think people really like the emojis and the direction that actually gives them.
Yes, so there is some message hard to describe, but when you're looking at this cloud of emojis, you can sense that mood. We don't have any analysis for mood. We still need to use our brains as humans. But there is so much message hidden in each of these emojis. And you can see the biggest ones for our events were like happiness, star in the eyes, and technology. Okay, so we take it as a good feedback.
With that, Mantis, are you happy with that? Does that sort of?
I'm pretty happy. Yeah, these are the two sort of more surprising ones for me: the phone and the laptop. Of course, the raise hands. Not surprised that that's the top one.
Actually, I would think because it's our first ever all remote engage, maybe people are being like sitting down to my laptop instead of going to the event. So that's kind of an interesting 2020-ism, if you will.
Yeah. If you also look at it, there is not a single negative emoji, because we collect all emojis. We don't collect just positive emojis. We collect all of them. So that's another, tap on the back that this event probably was a rather good one.
Right. I thought you just hit the negative emojis tab so that we don't see it.
That's for the purpose of this presentation.
Exactly. But what's kind of cool as well is, as Mantis was hovering over all of them, these are all dynamic charts. They're all clickable. Anything you want to dig deeper into behind the data, you can do that. So I think that's a trouble with listening a lot of times, is that you get these charts and you're like, cool, great chart. And then you go about your day. But what's the next step that you need to take? What's the content you need to learn from behind those charts? So I think that's an additional layer of listening and social media listening that's so important for brands to be able to access in their day-to-day workflows.
Yeah. So we'll show that in just a second, but just before we leave this page, it's also, Monica, you were mentioning the use case of kind of finding the advocates and influencers. So it's shown here as well, the people that were mentioning your brand the most during that time.
Mm-hmm. Such a great opportunity to understand these advocates and influencers in your space.
All right, well, let's get a little bit more granular. So let's say if we wanted to look at the number of mentions on the given day, and so Wednesday was our peak day, so we can click through to see what those exact mentions were on that specific day.
Yep. And again, I would remind, you can click on anything. You can click on emoji, you can click on the key topic, you can click on keyword, on a negative sentiment, and then it also shows you the mentions behind for more context, like now. Now you have that list of all the mentions which are behind the peak in the trend. You can go one by one, or you can sort them out by interactions. You can see maybe there was one mention which caused the most of, which inspired the others.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is great for our events. We can pass these on to our events team and make sure that they're in the platform as well to make changes for next year, or make changes to even the smaller events that we'll be hosting. It's all about what do you do next based on this data that you have.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the new listening is integrated in the platform. So if you were using our platform before, this environment is familiar. But another advantage is that you can mark specific mentions and send them to appropriate team for follow-up, as Monica said, for inspiration, or maybe as a selling opportunity, or maybe something for a support care, customer care, if there is something negative going on or complaints about the product. So by looking at this at the screen, your journey doesn't finish. You can continue in the other workflows as you find appropriate.
Sure. Okay. So before we spend too much time here, are there any audience questions that we need to address at the moment?
We had one question about sentiment in terms of languages. So the question we answered already was, yes, we can identify sentiment in Arabic. But the other question coming from Tony is about Vietnamese. So Robert, if you want to talk about all the languages that we have available for sentiment, that would be super useful.
We don't have so much time because recently we expanded the number of languages to around 100. Yeah. So we have a lot of languages. Of course, the accuracy changes. It starts the biggest accuracy with the most common language in the world, and this decreases. But it goes from 80 to 60, and that's like a industry benchmark. So for Vietnamese, we have some quite good accuracy, but sometimes you can analyze it better than the machine. So that's why you have option to change the sentiment manually if you want to improve your reporting. That's one of the things we are using ourselves as well. If we don't find it so neutral, but it's maybe more positive, but machine would say it's neutral, you can mark it, and then it updates all the reports you have.
I think that's a pretty good system. You got to work with the machines, and the machines got to work with you. And that's how we all get things done, right? And I think in the customer care section, we'll be considering a lot more about sentiment as well.
Yeah. So just briefly, before we get to the customer care section, there's one use case for listening that isn't utilized often enough, and that's looking at your competitors. And
that is a shame, Mantis. That is a shame.
It is a shame because there's you're sharing the same audience with the competitors, and actually you don't need to only learn from what you're doing on your channel. So you can really learn a lot by seeing how your competitors are engaging with their audiences and the kind of feedback they're getting. So, it's great to get feedback from one channel, which is your own, but to double that by 20, and if you know what to do with those insights, you can really supercharge your strategy in many ways.
Yeah, imagine what these 92% are missing out on if they aren't using listening for competitive research. You're missing out on not just marketing understanding, but also care understanding. Are there any industry trends that are affecting not just you, but everybody else? I think sometimes when something bad happens to us, we start feeling very alone as a brand, but maybe it's something that's happening, widespread, and then you can, as a brand, decide what to do next based on that insight rather than feeling like a failure.
Yeah, and if to get more practical, for instance, for us at Socialbakers, what we're kind of looking for, one use case is the kind of partnerships, for instance, our competitors are forming, and that's often you can catch that in social media easily. Monica, do you want to walk us through this kind of takeaway slide? We're going to send this deck to you after the webinar, and you're going to be able to return to these questions. But Monica, can you just quickly walk us through them?
Yep, just a speedy wrap up, as these are questions to consider not just you alone, but with your teams, because in 2021 planning, you need a good starting point to see if you're well equipped to handle the trends that are coming. So of course, it's understanding what channels you should be tracking and why. So which channels are your audiences most on? What's most important to you? How do you want to grow? And I think Robert underscored this perfectly, is that is your listening information organized and able to be shared across teams? So for us, our Engage event is huge for so many teams involved. Our design team, our PR team, our social media team, all of the speakers. If we can't organize that listening information, we can't improve and deliver a better experience. next time around. And I think that really leads into the last point. How are you making these insights not just available, but actionable to improve your results and make your audiences, clients, customers super happy with you?
All right. And now diving into the second part, which is talking about the customer care listening use case. And actually, it's really kind of a connected use case because it's, again, let's remember that this is the same customer going through that customer journey, and it's the same brand, and it has to be a cohesive, connected experience for them. And just to set this up, one thing that we have to recognize that in 2021, people are expecting immensely quick responses from your brand, near instant responses. But the issue is that we're not really there yet as businesses. We're not able to respond as quickly as customers expect in 2021. We're going to have to fix that. Well, why is that the problem? So this is a bit of a legacy issue. If we look at the way that our businesses have operated in the past, these two teams were really working on, different parts of the building, maybe different buildings in the past, and they really were using different channels to communicate with the same customer, actually. So the marketing team may be kind of doing campaigns in magazines, print magazines, TVs, while the care team was, working on a telephone or sometimes, SMSs, and even in the kind of towards the beginning of 2000s, it was still very much siloed, and those insights weren't really shared between teams, and the customer experience was a bit kind of disjointed. This changed entirely with the social media platforms, and the way it changes that it really shifted towards what's convenient for the user, not what's convenient for you as a brand. And now as a user, your pretty much entire customer journey can take place on the same social channel. You will discover the brand, you will message them, you will buy the product, and you will do your care in the same social channel. And that's posed an immense issue for businesses. And I know this is also something that at Socialbakers we've been trying to resolve for quite a while. Robert, do you care to comment here?
Yes, so every business is in the race for more clients and better experience for their clients, but not every business is as fast in digitalization, adopting the new trends. So in last year or beginning of this year, there were still some businesses which were pushing you to attend the branch to do something. But considering what happened, all that lockdown as well, even the very, very conservative businesses had to adopt and enable their workflows to digital channels. Yeah, you could change the reservation of your flight ticket through Facebook Messenger, for instance, or you could do more stuff with your government, etc. So the traditional borders, which were there for decades, here is a phone number you can call from 9 to 5, has disappeared. So, and people started contacting the businesses in the most convenient way. Yeah, and whatever chat application you have, they expect that they will put you all kind of demands about new things, updates, cancellations, complaints, appraisals through one channel. And that can cause a problem for the business because what they were used in the past, they had the different channels for different teams and they communicate in the background, and now they have everything in one continuous stream. So you as a business which wants to really stand firm in nowadays in this dynamic situation, you need to figure out how to take that one stream and divide it effectively across all different teams you have in your house.
Yeah, and so one of those streams is really the listening stream. So it's like you're listening to what's happening on all the social channels, and some of it is going to be relevant to the marketing team, some of it is going to be relevant to the sales team, and a lot of stuff is going to be relevant to the care team, and it just has to be routed correctly.
Yeah, but in general, what matters to all teams is that it's done quickly and smoothly, and that the customer doesn't really feel that friction of, being passed from one team to another. It's super important that even if lot is going on internally, you don't let anybody see that, how it's being made in the kitchen externally. Right.
And of course, if you are able to fix that, results are clearly visible right away. And Monica, do you want to walk us through this use case?
Yeah, so this is one of our customers, Daily Burn in the US, and they actually are a fitness app. And as you can imagine, over the past couple of months when gyms were closed or you couldn't go to your group fitness classes anymore, you still wanted to find that fitness community. So you can imagine the influx of new users, and with new users always comes, spikes in customer questions. And this is exactly what they were dealing with since the start of 2020. But what's really cool for them is even though their users are expecting to get in touch with them via any channel at any time and super fast, they're able to handle that volume and actually decrease their response times because they've centralized all that communication. They're not going out and looking for it. It's coming to them. They've set up their systems and their data and their Socialbakers feed in a way that they can respond to everything that's coming in and really make a difference on the experience of the Daily Burn app, the Daily Burn community, and the feeling of the brand that these new users are getting. And I think that's pretty magical.
Yeah, and it really shows in the results. I think before we get to the takeaway, if we could just spend a second to show how this looks in our platform and how our community team manages this. And again, Robert, will turn to you for a bit of insight here. So let's just give it a second to have this load. Okay, so I'm going to set up a listening filter for this feed.
Yeah, so you've moved to community, yeah?
Yeah, so now we're in the community section where you can see how this is set up. And I think I'm in the wrong account, so I'm not able to show this properly.
Yeah, so what we can see in community is at this moment, 3 different feeds of mentions of the messages. The powerful thing about community is you can create as many feeds as you want, each of them targeted to some objective you want to monitor. Yeah, something can be all incoming for your own profile, but next to it, you can have with our new listening solution, everything what's being told about you, but beyond your own profile. You can have also separate feed where everything which is told about you, but in negative way. You can have another separate feed when everything is told about your competitor. Yeah. So whatever objective you have, you can be on the beat of what's happening in the world at this very moment by being able to see that stream of dimensions that are happening. And you can choose. You want to react and respond, or you can again assign to another team to take care of it. Yeah. Because something is opportunity for sales. Another is inspiration for marketing. Another is, again, customer care, which should address maybe some wide problem about the product.
Yeah. So just to explain a little bit why I can't set it up, I don't think I have the right access rights enabled. So
I took it from you before this webinar.
Yeah. But if you want to open up the filters and just kind of show what's the possibilities here, I think it's super interesting to even talk about the customizability of your feeds, whether you're bringing in your own content or your listening content. So at the left side here, you can filter, for example, by sentiment. I think that's a one. So you want to be able to understand, okay, who's in charge of all of my negative comments? Maybe we should build a feed just for that so we can easily prioritize and answer those. And then if you filter by your different message types, then you can see, okay, I want to have just one feed for my social listening so that it doesn't get mixed in with everything else. Or if you want to mix it in, depending on how your teams are set up and structured, that's totally up to you as well. And then, of course, you can have all your listening queries coming in at once, or you can even filter by different queries. So, for example, if we want to separate it out based on our different teams, based on our different regions, you can do that as well. So it's really set up in a way to support your community managers who are going through it right now, support your agents, and really support, at the end of the day, your customers and clients who need a fast response, who are waiting for you to, even respond to their good morning, how are you? But most importantly, find where they're not talking to you directly and be able to still have those important conversations beyond your own bubble, beyond your own profiles.
All right. Anything else to add here in this section?
It's just difficult for me to really name all the objectives or all the use cases here. It really depends on what you want to know, and you can create a feed for that. Yeah, when we're going through that, maybe you have a campaign, maybe you launch something over the weekend. There is some specific hashtag or keyword, how you identify your campaign in the chatter, and you can have a feed of everything being told about your campaign. Yeah. and you know it, and then you can analyze it, and then you can share it. You can do anything with that.
Exactly. And before we close out of here, Manta, it's like you guys can see on the right side is this labeling functionality. I think it's so important to be able to categorize these conversations that you're having. It's not just about answering speedily, but then getting data insights even from these conversations. As we mentioned when we looked at every touch point, it's not just an opportunity to engage, but it's an opportunity to learn and from both sides, learn if your teams are doing a good job responding quickly. So building out your community management reporting, but also learn, what are the common spikes in complaints? Can we catch patterns in, a product complaint that we can then pass that insight and get that insight to the right teams. So it's really up to you how you're going to be analyzing. I think Robert makes good distinction when he talks about sort of the two areas of social listening that are most important, if you want to bring that up.
Yeah, so in the previous part before community, we saw analytics. Yeah, that's maybe for some market research when you're really trying to answer some very niche question. It's you put all the dimensions on one side and then you are really chopping it, and at the end you have the answer. But this is a community part. It's real time. Yeah, so if you really want to be on the beat of what's happening at this moment in the world, you use this tool. But all information also flows to analytics tools, so you can do a deeper analysis there. But in case you really are on the mission to catch some trends or some complaints or some crisis-related words, yeah, for instance, nailing the food. Everybody is afraid of this. If you are a restaurant, you are watching this stream, constantly. You don't leave any chances. But good news for you. In a couple of weeks, we are also releasing a so-called alert crisis management, where you can create alerts for specific amount of the negative conversations or specific words which you want to be alerted whenever they happen. So that's another kind of dimension of how you can use the community in your day-to-day work.
This is very exciting, Robert. What I also really like to talk about is, and you mentioned as well, is wherever you are in the workflow, you need your listening insights. So that's why we want to have it across the platform for whoever's using it and for whatever objective or use case. And I think that leads us nicely to understanding the customer care side of things, so much better, and that it is part of your marketing now. It has to be. These teams really have to come closer and closer together more than ever before.
All right, so still a couple of points to cover here. So I'm going to head back into the webinar deck. Again, this slide deck is going to be shared with you guys. So you're going to have these questions for you available to go back to. But Monica, do you just want to briefly walk us through this section?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, this is just the wrap up of basically everything from the care side or the more reactive, proactive side of things. Are you able to prioritize your tasks? What is your system set up to do? It doesn't have to be exactly, a solution, but you have to have something in place or a streamlined process to be able to prioritize tasks and answer the most crucial stuff first, because time is on the line. And then the question is, are you only being responsive, or are you also listening to improve strategy? So what is that sharing process from your community to your analysis to your marketing teams? And when you have these shared insights, what are the amazing new discoveries or opportunities that you can take on? So it's not just about engaging with your audiences, but then engaging with audiences in new and better ways because of these insights that you get from the community. They're full of insights, we all know. So learn from the best, learn from your loyal customers, learn from your angriest non-advocates, detractors, right? That's what they're called, Robert? Non-advocates, detractors.
Yes. They are there. Yeah. You want to know about them.
Yeah, I would say you're not listening correctly if you're only getting, all the people saying such beautiful, nice things about you.
Yeah.
You need it sometimes, when you're down, it's good to get some positive things. But when you are standing against their both feet, you want to know the whole truth.
Exactly. It's tough, but it's necessary.
Okay. And just to summarize again, I want to stress this point that when you're listening, you have to kind of have a goal for what you're after and know which part of the customer journey are you listening into, and because you're going to be looking for slightly different insights, and you're going to be improving different parts of your strategy there. So when you're going into the task of listening to your channels, keep that in mind. And I think that this presentation can help you be a little bit more accurate in that regard. Now, we have put together a pretty extensive listening, social media listening study, a guide for you that you can go through, and you'll find even more data around listening and more use cases detailed. So check it out. And I also want to leave a little bit of time for a Q&A. So we're going to jump into that. And of course, please connect with us on LinkedIn if you have more questions after this webinar. If you also want to see how the Socialbakers listening platform could work for your business, our experts will also happily walk you through it and tailor the presentation to your business problems. But without further delays, so what questions do we have from the audience at the moment, if we have any?
Yeah, let me check through and see. Robert's been very diligent as well in the chat in real time, basically. So thank you so much, Robert, for answering all the questions that are coming in. I think one of the questions, or maybe one of the things we didn't cover, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the report, is when we consider emergent trends, or we consider industry trends, how is social media listening allow you to tap into these trends rather than just maybe listening to your competitors or listening to your own profiles? What are some trend insights that we have that might be useful as we move into 2021?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one thing, maybe to the first part of the question. So where can you where can you look in order to find additional insights aside from your competitors, your channels, maybe influencers? So one thing that is important for our team at Socialbakers is to understand what other channels or what other pages or profiles do our marketing personas actually follow, because we want to listen to those channels. We want to kind of have a good sense for what those different pages are speaking about, what topics are mentioned the most often, and identify those that our business can be a part of. I mentioned this earlier in the webinar, and this can range from anything to like media pages, pages that create kind of entertainment content. They don't have to be competing with you on the same kind of, let's say, the same product as yours. They can be entirely different pages, but targeting the same audience, let's say. So I think, you can expand your search that way.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of questions that are coming in. Alice mentions that they are working with chatbots as well. So what's the sort of benefit of working with chatbots as part of your community management strategy? I don't know, Mantis, if you want to dive in, or
it goes back a little bit into that conversation we had about the nature of how customer care and marketing teams operate nowadays, and it has a lot to do with our social media channels for businesses have been flooded with new kind of messages, requests, inquiries, and there's just simply too many of them right now to process in a way that's efficient, in a way that makes business sense, and in the way that you can extract something useful data-wise from that volume. So what chatbots help you do is they help you kind of identify and sort these different queries, and the ones that they can answer efficiently, quickly, they will do that. But also those that they can't, they will kind of direct to the right customer agent with all the information they need to process that query further. But the important part for me that is not often discussed is that it allows things to be kind of measured. It allows, you can see the different volumes of a specific type of query coming in, and how long it takes for your teams to process it. I think anything I'm missing here?
I think you covered it, but I want to jump on that measurement. I think that's so important. We talk about every single touch point is an opportunity for analysis, and your chatbot's strategy should be no different in that. what's being escalated most often, and is that a pattern you can catch and correct in other parts of your strategy, whether it's in marketing or whether it's changing things on your website that maybe are unclear. If you're getting 1,000 questions about your opening hours, maybe you need to display them a little bit better on your website, on your Facebook page, things like that. So it's about not just improving that internal communication that's coming in through your chatbots or your community, but changing everything else so those questions stop coming, so that the big questions can be answered more thoughtfully and with more time spent on them.
Yeah. There's a more technical question coming from Alice. I wonder if we can answer this one. How do Socialbakers protect customer data? Example, if customers share their personal info via private messages and it flows into community management. Who can answer?
So this information definitely is not shared with inappropriate teams. So you have a permission management on top of community. Not every employee of your company which has access to the Socialbakers suite has also access to the community and has also access to specific profiles and has also access to direct messages within those specific profiles. Yeah, so there is like a metrics who can do what. It's up to you to train your staff not to share it, but our tool will not allow you to just freely copy paste and share with the other colleagues which are not allowed to. Yeah, so it's as protected as you would give the mobile phone to the hand of your employee. You know what he does with that information, if he's showing it to somebody else, that's hard to control. But within the tool, we don't allow inappropriate personnel to not authorized personnel to have access to that.
Yeah, and I think with the increase in digitalization and everybody setting up suddenly these digital channels, you really need to revisit your governance. Right now is the time to do that, to make sure that if any sort of processes were a bit more lax, now is the time to tighten up, button up, and make sure only that the people who have the right access to your, even your publishing, for example, so posting doesn't go out, is important for you to double check on and make sure that your permissions are set. And using a tool and solution like Socialbakers or any sort of tool that has these governance permissions granularly will make a big difference on your strategy.
Okay. Anything else that we have right now? And also, look, if we didn't answer your question, or if you have one that you come up with later, just reach out to us on any of our channels, whatever you prefer, or connect with us on LinkedIn. We'll answer it afterwards. Or if we don't have the answer, someone at Socialbakers will have it for sure. I just want to thank everyone for participating today and being so active in the chat and asking a lot of questions. It has been a really interesting discussion. So thank you. And also, I want to thank Monica and Robert for having this conversation with me and the audience.
It's always a good time. Thanks for having us, Mantis. And we'll see you all on the next one. Thank you, guys. Make sure you're coming next time. We'll share some industry secrets with you. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.